Hello everyone and welcome to Keep It Classical. Today is a very special day because today is Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you.
May the Force be with you.
And also with you.
May the Force be with you.
And with thy spirit. I thought that this would be a great opportunity to talk about the actual music of Star Wars. I've heard it argued that Star Wars wouldn't have been nearly the same artistic or commercial success that it is without the music. And I'm bound to agree with them. Yes, the special effects were groundbreaking, the modern mythology of the Force, and seeing the archetypal hero's journey in a sci-fi setting was also very impressive. For me, the thing that makes Star Wars such compelling storytelling is the ability to show conflict on different scales so fluently. Whether it's a firefight in a corridor, a dogfight between starfighters, a land war, a giant fleet of star cruisers, or a duel between two adversaries. Seeing these conflicts, sometimes consecutively and sometimes simultaneously on these different scales, adds variety and maintains excitement. But going back to the argument for music, try watching a few scenes from Star Wars without the music and you'll see just how much that argument holds water.
Did you hear that? They shut down the main reactor. We'll be destroyed for sure. This is madness.
Even George Lucas concedes. Star Wars was meant to be a simple hero's journey, a fantasy for young people. And then John Williams wrote the music and raised it to the level of art, popular art, that would stand the test of time. Williams ensured that Star Wars would endure forever. Without further ado, let's get started. I wanted to mention again that I started a Patreon page, and I wanted to thank those of you who have already shown your support through Patreon. You guys are the best. Please go check it out and consider becoming a patron. There's a lot to talk about with the music composed by John Williams, and that's because there's so much music over the course of 9 films. And because there's so much, in this video, I'm gonna stick with the music of the original trilogy, or episodes 4 through 6. From the classical composers who influenced John Williams like Wagner, Tchaikovsky, Stravinsky, and Holst, as well as John Williams' use of leitmotifs and themes. Let's start with the themes and leitmotifs. Back in the mid-1800s, a German composer by the name of Richard Wagner was challenging the establishment and generally turning the world of opera on its head. Wagner was rebuffing the formulaic and tune-driven world of Italian and French opera by writing stage works that went on for hours and hours and blended the idea of aria and recitativo into one seamless, continuous narrative. His magnum opus was The Ring Cycle, a 12-hour epic based on German and Norse mythology divided into 4 operas. To somehow try and create cohesion and uniformity over the course of all of these hours, Wagner uses music themes and ideas to try and help add to the storytelling. These themes represent characters, props, places, ideas, and even actions. These are called leitmotifs, which in German translates to leading or guiding motive. Perhaps to try and help add to the storytelling in the same way, John Williams uses extensive leitmotifs throughout each of the Star Wars movies. While this isn't the first time a film composer has used leitmotifs in a soundtrack, no other film composer has used leitmotifs as extensively as John Williams, with the exception of Howard Shore's soundtrack to The Lord of the Rings. Williams does this by composing several themes over the course of the Star Wars films. For example, in Episode 4, A New Hope, Williams composes a main theme and leitmotifs for the Rebels, the Force, the Jawas, Princess Leia, the TIE Fighters, and the Throne Room. What's interesting about all of these leitmotifs in the first movie is that you actually hear all of them, except for two, in the first 15 minutes. Here they are from the movie.
You all together.
Hey, baby, hold together.
Do you think they'll melt us down?
Clone Wars. Now he begs you to help him in his struggle against the Empire. I regret that I am unable to present my father's request to you in person, but my ship has fallen under attack, and I'm afraid my mission to bring you to Alderaan has failed. I have placed information vital to the survival of the rebellion into the memory systems of this R2.
In Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, Williams introduces leitmotifs for Darth Vader and the Empire, Han and Leia, Yoda, Boba Fett, and Cloud City, as well as bringing back several leitmotifs from Episode 4.
Hey, your worship, I'm only trying to help.
Would you please stop calling me that?
Sure, Leia.
You make it so difficult sometimes.
I do, I really do.
There will be a substantial reward for the one who finds the Millennium Falcon. You are free to use any methods necessary.
How's the gas mine? Still paying off for you?
Oh, not as well as I'd like. We're a small outpost and not very self-sufficient. And I've had supply problems of every kind. I've had labor...
In Episode 6, The Return of the Jedi, Williams introduces leitmotifs for Jabba the Hutt, the Emperor, the Ewoks, Luke and Leia, as well as bringing back several leitmotifs from Episodes 4 and 5.
We have powerful friends. You're gonna regret this.
Rise, my friend.
That's right. Come on.
Yes. It's you, Leia.
I know. Somehow.
Now, Williams isn't super strict with some of these leitmotifs, and while some are very specific, others will be used in a more flexible manner for multiple characters, places, props, or ideas. Also, this isn't a comprehensive listing of every single leitmotif from Star Wars, but you can find that resource elsewhere. And I have to give a big thank you to Dr. Frank Lehman for his hard work compiling this catalog. He's a professor of music at Tufts University, and I'll provide a link to his catalog in the description below. It's very effective for leitmotifs to call attention to something specific. For example, the first time we meet Luke Skywalker, Williams uses the main theme in a horn solo.
Luke, tell your uncle if he gets a translator, be sure it speaks Bachi.
This is the first time we hear this leitmotif in the movie proper after the opening sequence. This motif will come back again and again in each movie multiple times. This leitmotif will also be present during the first time we see Luke in The Empire Strikes Back.
Echo 3 to Echo 7. Ano, buddy, do you read me?
And the first time we hear this leitmotif in The Return of the Jedi is when we see Luke fighting the Rancor in Jabba's palace. Some of the coolest musical moments in Star Wars are where John Williams will layer the leitmotifs together to share multiple ideas and to foreshadow. For example, at the beginning of Episode 4, after the droids escape the firefight, we see a person in white doing something with R2-D2. During this moment, we hear two leitmotifs, the Force and Leia's leitmotif. At this moment, we haven't even learned Leia's name yet, what role she has to play in all of these things, or that she's sending a message to Ben Kenobi. But Williams is setting that up very subtly with this one music cue.
R2-D2, where are you?
What's also fascinating is that throughout the films, we can see how Williams will present these leitmotifs in different iterations. Let's take Vader's theme, or the Imperial March, as an example. The very first time we hear it is at the beginning of Episode 5, on a somewhat distant sounding piccolo. And unless you're really listening for it, you could even miss it. The next time you hear it, it's during an expositional shoot of Lord Vader's fleet of Star Destroyers. Here, the leitmotif is present fully and in all of its threatening menace. Throughout this film, that leitmotif is used again and again, cutting back to Vader and the Imperial ships. The next really important time that we hear this theme is when Vader gives the big reveal to Luke.
No, I am your father.
No. It's not true. That's impossible!
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
No!
Luke.
Oh yeah, spoiler alert. I mean, how have you not seen this movie? Just go watch it. Towards the end of Episode 5, as the Millennium Falcon gets away, we hear the theme again, this time reflecting Vader's humiliation at the loss, but indicates that he's not defeated yet. In Episode 6, we see the widest range of this leitmotif, from Vader's snarly entrance to the Emperor's terrifying presence. The last two times that we hear this theme in Episode 6 comes when Vader's helmet is removed and he dies in Luke's arms. First, it's played on very high strings to reflect Vader's fragile state, and it sounds gossamer and delicate like a spider's web. Finally, after Vader's ignominious demise, the leitmotif is played delicately on a harp. The leitmotif gets weaker and weaker until it fades away. We also need to talk about John Williams' famous borrowing from composers of the classical canon. John Williams was recommended to George Lucas by Steven Spielberg because of his work on Jaws. Williams had a reputation for mastering symphonic movie soundtracks. He did this because he looked back to great composers who came before him. And you can clearly see where much of this inspiration has come from when you play his music side by side with those composers. For example, much of the Star Wars soundtrack was inspired by Tchaikovsky, Wagner, Holst, Stravinsky, and Walton, among others. Listen to some of these side-by-side comparisons.
Hey, your worship, I'm only trying to help.
Would you please stop calling me that?
Sure, Leia.
You make it so difficult sometimes.
I do, I really do.
How's the gas mine? Still paying off for you?
Oh, not as well as I'd like. We're a small outpost and not very self-sufficient. And I've had supply problems of every kind. I've had labor...
Does this negate how much of an accomplishment John Williams' music is? Not at all. Nor does it lessen any of the hard work that he and his team of arrangers and orchestrators put into making the Star Wars soundtrack. He's not copying and pasting what other composers wrote before him, but he's incorporating the essence of those works into his own. It's not easy to try and write like those other composers and have it all work together in one seamless musical work. And in some ways, it matches perfectly with what Star Wars is. The film itself is a conglomeration of elements from other films, like westerns, samurai films, World War II dogfights, the hero's journey, fantasy, and of course science fiction. So it makes sense that the film's soundtrack would be an amalgamation of themes and harmonic languages from different composers, from different centuries and countries. And because of it, we have one of the most iconic and memorable bodies of film music that can truly stand on its own alongside its forefathers. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to watch the other videos I posted about classical music history, as well as other special subjects and hidden masters. If you heard something that you enjoyed or learned something new, share it with friends and loved ones. In the meantime, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It really does help. Hit the subscribe button for more videos. It also really helps. Consider supporting the channel on Patreon. That absolutely helps. And follow me on Instagram at Matthew D. Nielsen to get more content about classical music. And remember, may the Force be with you, and keep it classical.